Hi, fantasy romance readers. Today on the podcast, I sit down with author Kelsey Josephson to talk about her book, Forsaken Beauty in the Ether Beast. It's a steampunk reimagining of Beauty and the Beast with so many things that I love in a romance, including a bunch of beautiful nods to the original story.
At TeslaCon this last November, they had like a little free library, and I had donated some less than perfect copies of one of my first story collections. And I guess she saw the book sitting out there on the free to read thing. She took it home that night, she read it, and then she rifled through her cosplay stuff that she had and showed up at my table the next day dressed up like the main character. And it turned out that she shared a name with the lead character. So the good news is I do know my stuff for the tech side of things. The bad news is when I'm drafting, sometimes I get sidetracked and I have to leave myself a note saying I don't have to actually design the thing to work. So like for the longest time, there was a post-it note saying, Kelsey, you are not designing this. You can keep moving on with the writing. And so these are fingerless gloves. I'm cold all of the time. It will be really hot outside and I'll still wear them. Oh gosh, I would get so much done. Like, if I had a power source and headphones and my gloves, I'd be just completely unstoppable.
I hope you'll have a listen and then check out the rest of Kelsey's catalog of strange steampunk and reinvented fairy tales. I'm Kelly Chase, and you're listening to the Fantasy Romance Podcast. Kelsey, thank you so much for coming. I'm so happy to see you. How first of all, how are you? How is you are so busy. You're like the busiest writer right now in Romantasy land. How's everything going?
It's going well. I'm right in the midst of like, I've got one event after the other for the next few months. And yesterday I just went to my first library event. It was a lot of fun. I can't remember exactly how many authors were there, but it was all kinds of different genres. So I've got a little bit of like the post event tired, but it's like the best kind of tired where I'm happy, but I'm just a little bit out of it from it. But I've had enough coffee and rest now that I should be good to go.
Well, and that's you've been doing like the writer's dream. Like haven't you had a reader actually cosplay your characters already?
Yeah, actually, I was really surprised, and it was like a spur of the moment cosplay decision. At TeslaCon this last November, they had like a little free library, and I had donated some less than perfect copies of one of my first story collections. And I guess she saw the book sitting out there on the free to read thing. She took it home that night, she read it, and then she rifled through her cosplay stuff that she had and showed up at my table the next day dressed up like the main character, and it was absolutely amazing. I was floored. Was not expecting that at all, but it was very sweet. And it turned out that she shared a name with the lead character in it too, so it was just even more special. And yeah, I was mentally freaking out the entire time, and I was shaking a little bit afterwards like, "Oh my god, how is this possible?" But yeah, that was really sweet. TeslaCon is such like a fun convention where there's already a lot of dress up, but it felt a little bit more special that somebody picked one of my characters to spend the entire day dressed up like as her.
Oh my gosh, it's like literally an author's career high. Like, where do you go from here?
Right? It's like, okay, I guess I'm done now. No, I've got more stories to tell, but that was very sweet. I was not expecting that at all. Went into the room where all the authors were. She like pinpointed me and just like zoomed. I'm like, what is happening?
Oh my gosh. I think there's like that like trifecta of things for a writer where it's like your first reader event full stop where like someone actually came because they want to meet you or talk about your books, which is amazing. And you're like, that's way behind you. You've done that. The first cosplay and then fan art. Like once that starts rolling in, it's like you've made it. You're in it. It's amazing. So how was the library event? Did you have I'm always wondering like when because I don't live now in the town where I grew up, so the odds of anyone actually who I know in real life, other than like friends who like intentionally show up to see me, showing up, like it's not like there's gonna be a whole bunch of people like but you have like friends, exes, kids, teachers, like did you have any surprises at this event or was it very chill? Like
So at this one, the only person that I knew, I had run into another author that I had seen at a different book exposition. Let's see, it was like over the summer. But this time, this wasn't my regular library. This was actually a town about 20 minutes away, but I saw the call on Facebook for it. I didn't have any random surprises this time with it. I have had some random stuff with booksellers that I can tell you about another time, but it did feel very, like, community based. Johnston's not, like, a huge town, but it's grown a lot over the last few years, and there is a pretty big reading community there. Like, I saw a lot of rep for, like, cozy mysteries, a lot of memoir, um a lot of fantasy, things like that. It was just kind of all over the place with the genres, which is kind of fun to compare notes, but, it's always fun seeing people's faces whenever I have my table set up because 'cause I've got, like, a skull with the gears and, a plague doctor and, like, all these clocks and old suitcases and stuff like that, so that's always a lot of fun.
Oh my gosh, so many conversation pieces. Like, do you basically, like, dress up and do the whole thing yourself, like cosplay your own universe, or do you kinda bring the
So I
props?
haven't done one of my own characters yet. I've thought about it because so many of these events have like a masquerade ball, and in Forsaken Beauty and the Ether Beast, there is a masquerade. So there's a dress. I'm thinking about it. It just I would need the time to do it. I know a couple people who make like the masks and stuff like that, so I might ask for help with like making a mask at some point. I do the whole getting dressed up, like, I get stuff, like, between regular clothes off the rack, I do thrift stores, Amazon's been a big help, there's a lot of other vendors that, like, they make the clothes and stuff like that at the convention, so I'll grab that. For things like the library, since there's a good shot that I'm the only steampunk person, I don't do all the things, I just do, like, stuff that's little, like the necklace or maybe a corset belt, like, over my shirt and do, like, what I call it, casual steampunk, where I just put, like, a few of the accessories with the regular clothes. Um, but, like, if I know it's, like, more of, like, a steampunk convention, or if I ever did something like Planet Comic Con, I'd probably just go for it.
Well, you bring up a really good point, like, we haven't even talked about steampunk, so in terms of romantasy, fantasy romance, like, where do you see steampunk fitting in? Because I think a lot of people maybe don't even realize that, like, there is room at that big table for steampunk writing as well.
Yeah, definitely, like, a lot of other, authors who do steampunk and gaslamp fantasy, the book Solace, by Gail Carriger, that was my gateway into steampunk as books. Before that, like, I knew what it looked like for, like, clothes and cosplay and stuff like that. Somebody, while I was in high school in robotics, had showed me a cool sculpture while I was trying to research something else, while we were working on design things. I had no idea that it was actually in books as well. But what I loved about her books is that it shows the potential for, like, not just the romantasy, but being able to do, genre mashups because she includes things like werewolves and vampires, but puts them in a way that I just hadn't really seen before in an alternate Victorian London, and it was a lot of fun adding in the extra tech and, of course, the parasols from it and, like, automatons that are just terrifying, but it makes something that the characters, have a good obstacle, and it's fun window dressing.
Well, that's the thing. When I read Forsaken Beauty and the Ether Beast, so I loved that book so, so, so much. And I'm not deep into steampunk, but I was really surprised that to me, the steampunk elements felt very sort of science fantasy, magical, and there wasn't like a really high wall to get over to feel comfortable with it, to be totally drawn in. Would you say steampunk has a lot in common maybe with magic systems, and that's why it's definitely part of the fantasy genre?
I think so, like, there's there are within steampunk, there's different subsets, and, if you wanted to get really particular about it, like, technically speaking, steampunk should just be strictly steam-powered machinery. Then you can get into things like clockwork punk, where there's a lot more gears and things that run off of, like, more of a clockwork-based system. You get things like where you deliberately infuse magic. I fall more on the line where you need to have some kind of magic or fantasy with it because, like, from an engineering standpoint, some of these Steam things wouldn't work the way that you would want them to. So being able to do a little bit of hand waving comes in handy, at least that's where I'm coming from on it, and so that's where I just kind of roll with things.
And so you mentioned robotics. So, like, do you have a robotics background, a tech background? Like, how do you bring your skill set and your interests to steampunk?
Oh gosh. So I was so busy in high school, but the biggest thing that I did was I was on the robotics team, and by my senior year, I was the team captain for that. and we had to, every year build a robot to participate in a game, and you'd always be randomly partnered up with somebody else, like, as you go through these tournaments. It was very good practice for indie publishing because you only had 6 weeks to get this 120 robot built and shipped. So, deadlines, it was really good practice for that, and, I had gone to school for a bit for electrical engineering. So the good news is I do know my stuff for the tech side of things. The bad news is when I'm drafting, sometimes I get sidetracked and I have to leave myself a note saying I don't have to actually design the thing to work. So, like, for the longest time, there was a Post-it note saying, "Kelsey, you are not designing this. You can keep moving on with the writing as long as it's good enough and not too technical because you don't wanna bore your readers, you're fine." Like, I'm interested in the machinery, but I don't need it to be like, oh, this is gonna be mean, but picking on Lord of the Rings a little bit, spending several pages on, like, the forest. I don't wanna do that with my tech. Jules Verne is also guilty of that, like, I love 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, but sometimes he can get sidetracked by the entire plot describing how the machinery works, and I don't think that readers need to know everything. That's what having, like, authored notes are for, or, like, a blog post, but don't slow down the narrative for that.
Exactly. Like, when you have airships, I think that says it all. I don't need to know too much more about how it works. I get it.
Yeah, and it's easy to fall in a research rabbit hole with that. Like, I was having a whole moment where I was trying to figure out flying airships at night, and also there was some less than ideal circumstances for my pilot. So I finally ended up calling up my dad, who has a background in avionics, to be like, "Is this plausible enough?" And he goes, "Yes, you're fine. It probably would work a little bit different in reality, but in order to do that, you would have to completely go off into a tangent that I don't think your readers need to know. It's good enough, it's plausible, you're fine, keep going."
In terms of romance reasons as, like, an excuse for why things work, I think you've gone way, way deep into the when you've consulted an expert, I think you've done the work. That is amazing. So, speaking of airships and ether, can you, like, talk a little bit about the universe of Forsaken Beauty and the Ether Beast? Because there's so much there. I mean, the food, the social structure, the landscape. Like, can you tell us a little bit about that universe?
Sure. So the world of Newsran, it's really unusual in that in some ways it's like several steps forward in that it, like, the society, it, at first glance, it's very equal in some ways where, like, you wouldn't bat an eye about women in leadership or women in science or anything like that. However, the tech that's used to propel the society towards prosperity has really dark roots, and, my lead character, Belle, is from one of these mining towns where they mine the ether. It's not safe in its raw form, like, it causes early death and diseases in some people. In her case, it gave her the what's called ether poisoning, where it makes her sick, it affects her health, but it also made her super strong. It's kind of like a superhero a little bit, like, Spider-Man getting bit by the radioactive spider, that kind of thing. And, in her case, that attracted a lot of extra attention, and her father was taken advantage of by, a ringmaster who heard about her and bought her from her father, and we're in a society where you're not technically supposed to be able to do that, but, with the right kind of money and power, you can get away with that. So, like, it's a society that appears to be like things are going well, but it definitely has an underbelly to it that's not great. But there's people working in the society trying to go for a better future and go for better equality even for the poorest among them, like these miners.
Well, and Forsaken is a Beauty and the Beast retelling too. So you've got all this gorgeous world building that fits within steampunk technology. But then how hard did you have to work? Like what muscles did you flex to bring in that Beauty and the Beast? Those elements that readers would be looking for.
So, aside from, like, rereading, like, as many different versions of the original Beauty and the Beast tale, there's a lot of them. I also rewatched, one of my favorites, and even though a lot of this didn't make it in, there's a one in the Criterion Collection. It's a Beauty and the Beast that came out in the '40s, in France. It was filmed shortly after World War II was over with, so it was amazing that they were even able to get this movie done. But one of the things that really stuck with me is, the beautiful gardens and the grounds for it. They just looked so otherworldly to me, and I really wanted to capture this idea of, like, just being a little bit strange but beautiful for, like, the world building stuff, and be able to include those moments in there while I've got these characters who are going off on their adventures. So, I kinda took it and decided to do my own thing with it after doing all of these rewatches, and
That's one of the things I love so much is because retellings are so exciting because they feel so familiar, but it's such an original spin on the things that we expect to see. So you had all those moments. Like, when I think of your book after having read it, I just all those moments in the library, the food. I mean, you almost hear music even though it's not like a musical, but just that montage of moments where you see the clothes and all the technology. And then of course, there's the darker elements and the all the villains. I mean, you've written some absolutely amazing villains. I should ask you about them. So if you were going to cosplay one of your own characters, you've got really, really interesting, beautiful characters and their like physical appearances are so cool. Who would you cosplay from your own book?
I've got airship pirates in this, so it's a toss up between Captain Charity because she's got a bit of the wild hair going on, and her clothes are the best because 'cause they're just a mismatch of whatever she finds. It like, lots of, like, the really long coats and, like, the skirts that are frilly and, like, the ridiculous tops with, like, the corseted tops to it that's really, kind of over the top and flamboyant. I also really like, I love to hate her, my main villain in it, Delphine, likes to wear, like, a lot of these beautiful green dresses and, like, it's just it's fun and, like, I have to be careful of spoilers of my own book. But there's things with her towards the end of the books that aesthetically I think would be really fun to do, but I can't talk about it. But she would be another fun one to dress up as. Belle would be fun, but I feel like I would probably need to hit the gym a little bit more before trying to do something like that.
Well, and, like, I live in the city of special effects makeup, so I can just picture Belle, like, with a really, really cool I know, we don't wanna give away too many spoilers. And on the note of spoilers, though, I was gonna say or ask you, did you say airship pirate or pilot? Maybe you shouldn't answer that question. It could go
Oh,
either way.
it's okay. There are there are pirates. I won't go further into it, but yes, there's airship pilots and there's airship pirates. It's a whole thing. Whenever talking about the society and there are people who are on the fringes of society in this, and the airship pirates definitely fall under that category.
Well, and I follow you on social media, so I feel like there's so much about your writing process, I mean, the beautiful props you already mentioned, the plague mask and things like that. But let's talk about the real heroes in your writing world, which are pets. So tell us about you have pets. Do they ever influence your work? Do they contribute? How do they help if they do?
Oh my gosh, so much. So currently I have 2 black cats, they're both rescues, they're a mother and daughter. Hazel was a really young mom whenever she had her, so they're only a year apart, and they're always up in my business whenever I'm writing. They're very bossy about my writing time too. Every day my routine starts the exact same way. After I get my boys off to the bus stop, Hazel's already in here either taking a nap or standing guard at the window watching for me to come back in the house. And Willow, her daughter, is just chattering away, meowing at me to make sure as I'm getting my computer set up, getting my second cup of coffee of the day. She just like follows me around. She's a tiny little thing. I'm surprised she's not in here right now. But she will like just do like the cat chattering at me the entire time I'm getting ready. And then once I'm sitting here, she's like flop down by my feet. And they let me know whenever it's lunchtime, which is good because on my own, I'll just work right through lunch. It's bad. And then sometimes on the weekend, they forget it's the weekend and I may or may not be in the office, but they'll like come and sit right outside my office to see if I'm coming in here to do any extra work. It's their favorite room in the house. Before I had them, the cat I had for years, Princess, she was my influence for Cinders, one of the cat that's in Forsaken that spends a lot of time on the airship and has my beast completely wrapped around her.
Kelsey, so when you hold up your hand, I can see that you're wearing some kind of cute, cute gloves. What are those? Can you tell us about those?
So these are fingerless gloves. I'm cold all of the time. It will be really hot outside and I'll still wear them. I credit these with being able to type faster because before I had these, like I could type, but like get cold hands and I'd have to like spend too much time doing this. So my sweet mom made me a jillion different pairs of these. These red ones are my favorite. Like they're the most broken in. You can see where they're like starting to fade. But even whenever I go to events and things like that, like, sometimes the convention centers, they're so cold, like, whenever you go to try to sign anything or, like, check out somebody's order, it just gets to be a lot, and the good part is they do tend to go with a lot of the steampunk outfits, so I just go with it, and it's something I'm used to. It's kind of a sensory thing too, but, yeah, I'm pretty much always wearing my fingerless gloves. It's less of a fashion statement and more of a necessity for me. It's kind of funny.
No, but Kelsey, it's so perfect because you know that social media, like there's always some cool new like do this trend on social media, and it's like a picture that just perfectly represents you. I feel like it's everything, like the gloves, the necklace. You are the living steampunk writer. It's so perfect.
Yeah, it's fun getting to pick out stuff. The hard part is, like, having to scale down, like, so you go to some events and they'll give you, like, a 9-foot table, and that's great, there's lots of room to play with, but you go to something else and it's 6 foot, and you're like, "Oh, oh, what's gotta go? I like all of my things."
So, Kelsey, I want to ask you about steampunk is so interesting. And to me, it's such a fun part of romanticy. Like now I'm hooked and I will read probably things that I wouldn't have necessarily thought fit, especially within the romance genre before. So, thank you for that because you introduced me to a subgenre that I absolutely love. But when it comes to like nerding out on stuff, so let's say that you were not stuck on a desert island for like ever, like a finite amount of time, like a year. What kind of things would you have to bring with you so that you could just like nerd out, which is kind of like the writer's dream, right? Like just a year alone to do whatever I
Oh
want.
gosh, I would get so much done. Like, if I had a power source and headphones and my gloves, I'd be just completely unstoppable. Um, I need a power source. I need a coffee machine. I need coffee. No one, I mean, I guess if I'm alone, it doesn't matter, but no one wants to deal with me if I haven't had my coffee. Like, it doesn't matter how much sleep I've had. I am the worst first thing in the morning. It's bad. It's really bad. Let's see, I would need one of my many copies of Frankenstein. That's one of my absolute favorites, even though it isn't technically steampunk, but so many of the movies like have those elements to it. But for me, it's just the ultimate in like the mad science and stuff like that. And I like bringing that element into my steampunk. I would need all of my journals and my writing utensils because I like doing my notes by hand. And oh, probably a box of, like, stuff like this so that, like, if I got bored, I could craft with it because I like doing paper crafting with steampunk elements and, like, art journaling. There's a lot of cool artistic possibilities there, and it is a good reset whenever I'm stuck on a plot point to be able to throw paint around or, like, have, like, stamps with, like, the steampunk elements on it to be able to play with it.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. Like, so when you want to reset your brain and really be thinking about, like, I'm stuck in a plot point or I'm not sure what to do with this character, what do you do to sort of like feed that muse?
So it depends on like what it is that I need. Like sometimes it's that I'm restless and I need to get out and move. So it's headphones on, go out on a walk around the block or go somewhere new. Other times it's that I just need to do like something completely unrelated and like play a video game and suffer along in one of my Baldur's Gate romances. Um, but it's a whole thing. Um, or get out my crafty supplies because whenever I'm doing that, I don't think about anything else. I'm thinking about like the composition on the page, or sometimes even less than that. We're just going to make a glorious mess and see what happens. And like that is one of my favorite ways is being able to make a mess and not worrying about what happens.
I know, but then you also need someone to come and clean up after you. Like, it's kind of frustrating to make the mess and have the fun, and then also be the grown up responsible for cleaning. That's the downside.
So the good part around that is like I've got like this crafty mat thing that I can put down and it's washable. So like after I'm done, I can just pick it up, carry it to the sink and everything goes down. And, I put a stopper in first because that really shouldn't go down the drain, but, like, it makes it so much easier because, like, yeah, for me, it's, the time to set up the area to make sure no one else touches it, like, my cats really have tried very hard to, like, stick their paws in the paint, so I haven't been doing paint near as much, but it's yeah, it's the planning around it, so I'll, like, make myself like a little kit and be like, "Okay, next time I have free time and I wanna do something, I've got a kit ready to go, so there's no prep time involved," but if I don't do that, it's a lot less likely to happen.
Yeah, yeah. Tell Hazel and Willow, just stick with the writing process. This is me time now.
Yeah.
Well, Kelsey, do you have any exciting like book stuff up on the horizon? It can be something you're working on now that you're hoping to release or events, anything you want to share that's exciting and coming up.
I've got a few events coming up, let's see, on March 9th, I've got my very first book signing at Barnes& and Noble, so that will be fun at it's at the Jordan Creek Mall in the Des Moines area. The month after that is the Chicago Steampunk Expo, which is one of my very favorite steampunk conventions, and, this year's theme, it's like Nosferatu at the World's Fair, so there's gonna be, like, a lot of really great vampire cosplay in addition to, like, all of the steampunk elements. I'll be giving a reading from Forsaken Beauty and the Ether Beast there, along with doing a lecture about some real history about the 1893 World's Fair while I'm there, like tying in reality with like steampunk culture, like where the influences are. And then in May, I'm a pro guest at DemiCon. They're doing a mashup for this year's theme, and they have me doing several different panels, including things like steampunk and fairy tale retellings, among some other things. We're working out the finer details on that. And then book-wise, I'm in the middle of the first draft for the first book in a series. It's a lot of fun with, the world kind of feels a little bit more like Howl's Moving Castle, except it's like a steampunk world where, like, the magic has gone away, but something has caused it to come back, and it's very rivals to lovers, enemies to lovers. It's, 2 people having to work together who absolutely hate each other, and then they end up falling for each other by the end of it, and I'm excited about it. Lots of research for that one.
Oh my gosh. Well, I'll have to talk to you again after that book is finished, but I can't believe you are truly just living the author dream. Barnes and Noble. First of all, I have to give a shout out to the state of Iowa. You know, I went to college in Iowa, so I'm like an Iowa girl at heart, even though I haven't been there in many, many years. It is so amazing to talk to you and hear all the fantastic things going on. You have a fantastic Substack, so we'll have to include some information about that so people know how to find you and just read all of your musings. What goes into the Substack that people can look forward to hearing about?
So I try to split my time between writing about things that are strictly steampunk, and since I do a lot of like fairy tale retellings and some of those romantasy elements, like I kind of split my time talking about those. Like in the one of my last newsletters, I talked about things like the importance of relationships in things like speculative fiction, because I make the argument that all of that cool tech doesn't mean anything if you don't have any heart to it. So I talked about some of my favorite examples of that, and like Howl's Moving Castle was definitely one that had popped up in it. And I think that was one of my favorite things that I've done so far with it. But I'm hoping to also include some of the cool research I've been doing for this work in progress. I'm just not quite ready to hit people with that one yet because it might give away some of the plot points.
Understandable, no spoiler, total spoiler-free zone here. But I will say I so love your writing. I loved Forsaken Beauty, and I'm so grateful that you took the time to sit down with me because I just want to shout it from the rooftops and share it with other people. You are amazing, your writing's amazing, and we are going to look forward to seeing all the amazing things coming from you in the coming months. Thanks, Kelsey.
Thank you so much.